Okay, you're back with us. But you agree, Mr. Congressman, the accreditation of the CHED is still necessary. Or it's just, this is shotgun. The accreditation can be put aside as long as you're an SUC, you're entitled to this law.
There is no discussion or there's no statement in the law with respect to accreditation of the SUCs. The mere
Okay.
fact that you are a state university or college,
Yeah.
that
You're
you're
entitled.
entitled to implement this free tuition
Okay.
scheme.
Okay.
What I think there is a need for accreditation is with respect to local universities and colleges.
Of
Because it states there that definition of an LUC, local university and college, has to be CHED accredited.
Okay, but the enrollees, let's look into the characteristic of the enrollees. Do they have to meet a certain standard to be able to be entitled to this? And some of them, they say, I'm sure you've heard this, they don't need to be in a state university because they can go to a private school. They can well afford it. So are they also entitled even if they're well off?
Yes and no, Eric.
Oo.
One, yes, because in the law, there are admission and retention requirements. So
Okay.
it's about admission. You can get admitted if you pass the qualification set by the school.
Yes.
Retention, if you maintain a certain grade
Yes.
or certain criteria of the school, then you are retained in the program.
Yes.
So that makes you in the running for availment of the free tuition in other cost system.
Uh-huh.
Now, as for the private schools, yes, it's also correct, but that is an issue whether we have to implement the two together, because
Okay.
if we are really lacking in funds, we can only implement the first phase and implement the latter phase later. But as far as private schools are concerned, they can also avail of the subsidy, because the law speaks of three things: free tuition, other cost, subsidy, as well as loan program.
Hindi ba pwedeng libre ang edukasyon if you set a certain rating, qualitative rating, and then if you are lower, you only get percentages? I mean, I'm just thinking out loud in terms of, para hindi masyado mabigla in terms of budgetary, yung budgetary shock, no? So you can put this on a timeline that if you're only at this rating, you get so much support, percentage, as far as a state university. If you are really brilliant student, very promising, you get 100% free tuition. Why didn't we think of it in those terms? Why lahat libre kagad?
Well, actually, the law itself is very nice because it's titled to be Free Education College Act.
For all, no?
For all.
Oo.
But you know, in order for us to really safeguard not only the government but the state or even the taxpayer, is that a strict regulations for this particular policy should be implemented in full.
Oo.
Meaning to say, it is within the parameter of, Commission on Higher Education, who happen to be the overseer of this particular, the IRR, the implementing rules, they are the one who will gonna develop this, to really set the tone for a clearer, justification how to be able to enjoy this particular privilege or, law. Because if the state universities or perhaps were just given the free access to that particular field, perhaps it will put into several wastages of resources. So meaning to say, it is within the certain qualification standards set for in order for us to assure that this Free Education Act will be accessed to a deserving but actually good student that our country needs to be served for future.
What I'm saying is we could not stratify the merit for free education, for a certain amount of your tuition being matriculated by the government. We just open the door. Everybody is that what you're saying? Everybody is now allowed.
Well, from the law itself, it says that Free Education Act. So
Yes.
meaning to say, it covers actually the law itself is very clear that it has several phases prior to its implementation. But it is within the regulatory agency that will gonna set the tone in order to standardize this particular component.
Congressman, how about the opt-out that Senator Escudero is talking about? Mayaman ka na. I mean, hindi mo kailangang pondohan ka ng gobyerno, no? You're depriving somebody else of that slot. So, pwede bang opt-out na hindi bali na lang, sige, I want to be in this prestigious university, but I will pay.
The opt-out provision is provided in the law itself.
Yes.
That if you can pay, you can opt out of the free tuition scheme, and that the governing boards, the board of trustees of the university, could come out with regulations as to how to implement this.
But this is voluntary on your part if you want to opt out. Now, who would like to opt out from free education? Hindi ba dapat there must be some review as to the capacity to pay of the individual or the family, and yet you are able to enjoy a prestigious university, but you have to pay for it because you're removing somebody else's quota. No, this was not also.
That is right. But I think the opt-out has a reference to those who are not included in the priority list.
Okay.
Because in the law, there a priority for students who satisfy this financial need criteria. Like for instance, specifically in the law, those who are stated in the listahan 2.0 of
Yes.
the DSWD.
Yes.
And number two, second after that, those whose families, after evaluation by the SUC, are classified as indeed needy of financial assistance. So that opt-out provision would be apply if there is already a issue as to the financial capacity of the student.
Dr. Chavez.
Well, from the point of view of different, let's say, the way I counter-analyze it, it's very difficult really on the part of the government to really perhaps identify because of our political structure. Because the moment you says it's free, everyone is really tagging to become part of this. But it's our own value system that would somehow dictate that if we can manage to pay, why not paying?
Yes.
But since it is really a privilege now being drafted into a law that everyone should enjoy, in my subliminal mind, it tells me that if I am qualified because of my mental capacities, I think I should not be deprived. The only advantage compared with other students is that it's not really my fault if I am financially advantaged over others. But the thing is, if it is free access, then if you can be able to sustain the rigorous requirements set for by the universities and you even top in the qualifying examinations, I think you must be given fair equal chances.
Dr. Chavez, I hope in the IRR is included that if it's a 4-year course, you have to finish it in 4 years.
Yeah.
Because I know there are some individuals who are very brilliant, they're in the right school, but they would prefer to delay and delay because of their other extracurricular activities in a particular university.
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to, you know what I mean, no?
Even the manual of regulations for almost all schools is setting what we call the residency program or residency period. And I think it is best fitted to identify that if it is a 4-year course, a
should be a
student must
4-year
be
course.
finished within the span of time demanded for in the curricular.
And it should be a
let's say,
full load
offerings.
because there are some people who do not go on a full load.
Yeah, exactly. Because if we try to make some sort of diversionary method or mode into this particular segment, we are not actually serving the extent or the purpose of the law. So it should be within that bound.
Congressman, the PMA are scholars. Philippine Military Academy are scholars. They are scholars ng bayan. Pardon me if I use the term. And they render service to the Armed Forces of the Philippines. In another sense, these are also scholars ng bayan. What's the return? Public service, government service? How does the state be able to gain from their new talent, from these new graduates?
The reward of the state is their service in the future, and it's a long-term investment.
Okay.
Because these are the persons from whom we draw the labor force
Okay.
for our defense in the state.
Yes, PMA, but like for in this case, ordinary students, their tuition is free. Isn't there some kind of a return for the taxpayer, for the government, that they render 1-year service, 2-year service? We do that for doctors, nurses.
To be candid, Eric, that is really the debate about the granting of this free college education bill.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, you really are giving for free,
Yes,
just without any effort.
yes.
But to be fair to the law, there are qualifications therein as to how to make it work consistent with national developmental goals. What do I mean? If you, for example, if you overstay, if you do not finish your course with 1 year after your expected date of graduation, then you're disqualified.
Okay.
If you do not maintain retention requirements, you are disqualified. And of course, it goes with the saying, if you're not admitted to the school, you cannot avail of it. So there are embedded exclusions in the law itself so as to make this. But as to the debate of really whether it is free or free access, then that is really a debate. But I believe that this law does not really provide just free education. It is really providing for free access.
Yes.
So if you really want to get free college education, this is one avenue for you. But it's not really for free because you have to pass through a sieve of certain preliminaries.
Okay.
In the IRR, do you see how do you merge the subjects, the curriculum, to make it current, to make it, answerable to the demands of the youth now?
Well, that is a very good and tough questions to debate on because just recently we are now in the full implementation of K to 12,
Okay.
and the Commission on Higher Education now issued several policies, standard and guidelines for the new curriculum for the incoming freshmen in the coming years.
Yes.
And in fact, as a curriculum developer, I've seen a lot of what we call gaps between, and how can we particularly balance between and among the K to 12 transition going to the tertiary levels, because apparently this will serve as a springboard in order for us to really improve the cycle of educational governance.
Okay.
But come to think of it, it's really the duty of these particular agencies to assure the public that the education that they are actually delving into is actually connected and perhaps collaborated in order for us to ensure that there might be an opportunity, because I understand your predicament of questioning the return of service.
Yes,
The return
yes.
of service. I just want you to bring to another segment of our
That's
discussion.
another value system which is very important, should be incorporated in the student. Yeah.
Let's say, for example, it's really nice that we have this free tuition act, and there are a lot or countless students who are going to be taking that in, because Filipinos are so dynamically active in terms of educating themselves, and even
Yes.
the parents are now oriented to that. But the thing is, due to the limited opportunities, now we cannot underscore the fact that sometimes when we speak of service to society, if, for instance, there are several takers who happen to finish that particular course, and there's no particular opportunity landed in this particular country, I think the law should be shall be not serious enough in telling that you need to stay here for a long time, because if there's no opportunity to be banked on here, what will gonna happen to the graduates?
yes,
So if the opportunities perhaps can be located somewhere else, so that's also one way or another of bringing in several other dynamics of learning to the different segments of society.
Congressman, final question. 20 billion, Chad says we need about 20 billion in the coming years. Do you see the possibility that this will further increase in the future, the costs for free access to education?
Yes and no. Yes, if we could not address the budgetary requirements for the sourcing of this law, but no, if we could be creative enough about it so as to resort to other sources of funds. Under the law, there is a provision there as a sources of funds, and it does not limit itself to the sourcing thereof, including grants, donations from public and private entities, from whatever sources. In fact, I also mentioned that the possibility of having to resort to the issuance of bonds, because that is a possibility.
How about private institutions having also a certain percentage free access to quality tertiary education?
That is a possibility.
Okay.
So long as it is legal and with the right guidelines,
Yes.
we can draw on it. But the thing here is that we have initiated this landmark legislation,
Okay.
and we believe that it is in the right direction. In fact, in the heart, it has, kumbaga, may puso tong
Yes,
legislation
yes,
na to.
yes, yes.
And it's a very good start that we have upgraded on the part of the students. It's a time to address the concerns of the teachers and other stakeholders
That's the
in
next, yes.
education. But it sets a policy direction as to where we should invest our funds the most.
Okay. Well, that's the final word for tonight. We'd like to thank, of course, our guest that made the discussions quite lovely and quite interesting. Congressman Bong Belaro, Juan Ang Edukasyon, and of course, Dr. Abilino de Chavez. Marami po salamat sa inyong dalawa. At wala na po tayong panahon. Ito po si Eric Espina, palagi po nagsasabi, magmasid, makialam, higit sa lahat ay manindigan. Dahil wala pong magmamahal sa Pilipino kung hindi ang Pilipino. Daghang salamat, mayong gabi kaninyong tanan.